and welcome to the fourth module of the UN Habitat Masterclass. My name is Nienke Andriessen, and I work at the Swiss Federal Institute for Aquatic Science and Technology. This module provides insights on the management and treatment performance of wastewater and fecal sludge at a global scale. Why is this important? If we know current performance levels, we can identify what, why, and where improvements are needed. In this module, we will begin by looking at global estimates for wastewater and fecal sludge across the sanitation service chain. Next, we will highlight key findings from the global mapping on treatment performance and then conclude with insights into the impacts of climate change. In urban areas around the world, solutions for managing sanitation are highly variable. Some cities rely on sewer networks to transport wastewater to centralized treatment facilities. Other cities manage wastewater through on-site storage in containments, creating fecal sludge that must be periodically emptied and transported to semi-centralized treatment facilities, a process commonly referred to as fecal sludge management. Most common is a mix of these modalities. It is important to remember that any of these combinations can provide safely managed sanitation, as long as the entire service chain from excreta generation to disposal is adequately managed. In general, we tend to see more sewer coverage in Europe and the Americas, and more fecal sludge management in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. You can see in this figure that coverage within our sample ranges from 100% access to sewer connections in Paris, France, to 100% on-site sanitation in Dioula, Mali, with most cities having a mix of both of these management strategies. Understanding quantities and qualities, or Q and Q, of wastewater and fecal sludge that is generated in a city is important for designing appropriate management solutions. For populations that are connected to sewers, quantities are often estimated by per capita water usage for that specific city. It is much more difficult to predict Q and Q of fecal sludge, as fecal sludge is stored in underground containments that are often informally constructed, without any records or level of standardization. The wastewater sector has had decades of extensive research, whereas research on fecal sludge management is still in its early stages. However, methods have recently been developed to make better estimations for Q and Q of fecal sludge based on demographic, environmental, and technical information. The strength of wastewater is often determined by its BOD, or biological oxygen demand, and its COD, or chemical oxygen demand. This, together with information on solids content and nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, informs selection of appropriate treatment technologies. Treatment performance is most often measured by calculating removal rates of these parameters. Even when there is a sanitation management system in place, it does not always guarantee that the wastewater is safely managed. You can see in this figure from 2022 that safely managed sanitation coverage ranges from 93% in North America to less than 50% in the Middle East, North Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, and South Asia, to 24% safely managed in sub-Saharan Africa. As defined by the UN's Joint Monitoring Program, wastewater is considered safely managed if improved sanitation facilities are in place and the wastewater or fecal sludge is either safely contained on site or transported to treatment off-site via a sewer network or road-based transport. And there is no contamination into the environment across the entire sanitation service chain. Due to the complex service chain for fecal sludge management, there are numerous points along the service chain where it is possible for fecal sludge to directly enter the urban environment. Challenges to safe fecal sludge management include poorly constructed and leaking containments, the high cost of emptying services, and congested traffic in urban areas inhibiting effective transport to treatment. To further complicate the matter, even if wastewater is categorized as safely managed, it does not necessarily mean that it is effectively undergoing treatment. You can see in this figure, which shows data from 56 countries representing approximately 20% of the world's population in 2015. Here you see that from the total amount of municipal and industrial wastewater that was generated, only around 30% was actually treated. Another way to think about treatment performance is to look at the variability in removal percentages for BOD, COD, nutrients, and solids, and how they vary across regions. The treatment performance can vary based on the design of treatment plants, but also based on whether or not they are functioning. Treatment failure can result from inadequate operation and maintenance due to financial resources or engineering capacity. An effective way to visualize relative amounts of wastewater and fecal sludge that are safely or not safely managed in a city is the SFD methodology, which stands for excreta or shit flow diagram. This methodology is meant as an advocacy tool for effective communication. You see here, with the example of Kampala, how it includes both sewer-based and fecal sludge management systems, and follows them both along the sanitation service chain from containment, emptying, transport, and treatment. In addition to the challenges outlined in this module, safely managed sanitation in cities is also under increased threats due to climate change. Extreme weather events resulting in floods, droughts, windstorms, storm surges, and sea level rise have negative impacts on infrastructure and on-site containment of wastewater. For example, when wastewater treatment plants are washed out during flooding events, in addition to resulting infrastructure damage, the biological processes take significant periods of time to recover. There are already ways known to effectively deal with these challenges. For example, recognizing that combined sewer systems, which are not dimensioned to deal with increased rainfall, need to be adapted. On-site containments are particularly vulnerable to climate events and pose a high risk for contamination when flooding. Future solutions need to take the changing climate into account. In conclusion, the global mapping reveals significant variation in wastewater generation and actual treatment, resulting in untreated waste polluting the environment globally. There is an overall lack of data regarding wastewater and fecal sludge management, which is needed for effective sanitation strategies. 3 takeaway points to remember are: 1. Cities use various combinations of managing their wastewater through sewers and centralized treatment facilities, and managing their fecal sludge stored in on-site containments, which are emptied and transported to a semi-centralized facility. 2. The treatment performance is largely determined by the removal of BOD, COD, solids, nitrogen, and phosphorus. 3. Increased data collection on safely managed and treated fecal sludge will contribute to better understanding, which is needed for better future management.